That's what I'll explain. We're in a new location, as you all can tell. My name is Donna Berger. I'm the Director of the Office of Traffic Safety with the Department of Public Safety and TZD co-chair. With the new situation we have for a webinar, we do have a microphone. However, it's not to project to you. It's to project to the people that are online for the webinar. So it seems a little odd. We will be passing around the microphone for introductions. So please hold the microphone right in front of your mouth so the people in the online audience can hear who's here. I wanted to start off first and ask Jay Hippis to come up and introduce himself, a TZD co-chair from MnDOT.
I'm surprised Donna did not invite or introduce me as my second name, which is the new Sue, Sophia Sue Porter, known as the new Sue around the DOT. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm very honored to be the TZD co-chair around the state. I've met a lot of you before. Some of you have not met. I'm looking forward to meeting with you. A little background about me. I am new to this office and this position. My previous positions in MnDOT were dealing with large construction contracts and dealing with project management, but I've always had this hidden passion for traffic. I was consultant for a couple years living in Wisconsin. I really did traffic engineering back then. So T and safety are very near and dear to my heart, so I look forward to working with all you as the TZD effort continues to move on. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. The topic is on the Younger Drivers Toolkit. This tool is helping local agencies educate younger drivers on driver behavior issues. And the project was funded by the Minnesota Local Road Research Board. And to those joining us here, which I mentioned in person, we also have a remote audience, which I think new high, 20 participants online. Today we're pleased to welcome two presenters. We have Renee Keel, who is Senior Associate with the SRF Consulting Group, with more than 15 years of experience in traffic, transportation safety, and transportation research. Renee has had the pleasure of assisting MnDOT with various safety projects over the past 8 years, most recently working on the district safety plans. She regularly works with the Minnesota Local Road Research Board on research projects to assist local agencies. Renee is a registered professional engineer and a professional traffic operations engineer and has a civil engineering degree from the University of Minnesota. And we have Sheree Marty, joined CH2M as the driver of your team lead in 2011 after serving 4 years as Director of the Office of Traffic Safety with the Department of Public Safety, and it was the governor's representative for the highway safety. Her service with DPS include incorporation with OTS staff and partners, the passage of primary seatbelt, ignition interlock, and booster seat and GDL, and no text and accessing the web while driving, as well as the growth and strength of the Minnesota TZD program. DPS, Cherie should educate. This is long, Cherie. She's a great gal. And we love her very much. We look forward to Renee and Cherie's presentation, but first I would like to take a moment to pass the microphone around for you all to introduce yourselves. As I mentioned, please speak into the microphone, and we'll start here with Cherie.
CH2M Hill. Renee Consulting Group.
Eric, Government Affairs.
Sprattler, the Sprattler Group.
Traffic.
Jake Meyer, Human First, University of Minnesota.
DCN, Human First Lab, University of Minnesota.
First Lab.
We have University of Minnesota.
Roadway Safety Institute, University of Minnesota.
Susan, TZD Regional Coordinator for the Metro. Southwest TZD Regional Coordinator. Northeast Northwest Minnesota TZD Regional Coordinator. The Center for Transportation Studies and the Roadway Safety Institute at the U of M.
Mike, Bloomington Police Department.
Children's Hospitals.
Care.
Hennepin County Medical Center and the Minnesota Emergency Nurses Association.
Office of Traffic Safety at DPS.
For Transportation Studies, U of M.
Jones, Office of Traffic Safety.
To our Office of Traffic Safety.
AAA.
H2M.
Leslie Seymour, Injury and Violence Prevention Unit at the Department of Health.
Pukin, MnDOT's Office of Traffic Safety and Technology.
Public Safety, Office of Traffic Safety.
Minnesota Safety Council and the Network of Employers for Traffic Safety.
Just Southeast Regional TZD Coordinator.
And is the State TZD Program Coordinator. CAD Drivers Education Instructor, St. Paul Schools.
Back, Driver Education Instructor, St. Paul Schools.
Nita, Driver Ed Instructor at St. Paul Schools, and for Driver Inc.
For how many of you is this your first time here at a breakfast? Very impressive. Thank you. I want the online audience to please type in any of your questions or comments you have into the chat box, and we'll answer them during the Q&A following the presentation. I want to encourage everyone to interact on social media. You can follow TZD on Twitter and like on Facebook. I also want to remind everyone about the statewide conference that we're back in Duluth this year, November 16th and 17th. Mark your calendars. The hotels, are they open for registration? And
Yep, the information online with hotel and registration. The official announcement email will go out in August when the preliminary program is ready, but a lot of the hotel and registration information is online.
Okay, we'll just stay with you. You have a couple of announcements regarding the conference.
So some of you know we have an EMS, EMS scholarship for the conference to encourage folks in the EMS community to attend. We have 20 tips available that cover the cost of the run, and then 5 of those would cover the cost of a hotel. So if folks live outside of a certain geographic area. At any rate, if you or someone you know is interested, I have 4 applications, and I'll pass those around. I can also send it to you on email, so just let me know in case you didn't get it. Okay, TZD Awards. So as you know, as part of the conference, we do the award ceremony. So every year, a series of folks are honored for their work in the traffic safety community. And award nominations are being accepted right now through the 22nd of July. So you've got about a week and a half left to submit nominations. So please look for that online on the TZD website. If you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
So more things. I just wanted to give you an update on our current fatalities. Currently for 2016, as of yesterday, we were at 186, and that's compared to 189 this time last year. We know last year was a bad year. We're building pretty much neck and neck with that this year, so we have a lot of work to do. I don't think we have anyone here from agency media staff. Is there anyone from health or MnDOT? No, our communications people are not here. They're a little busy. But I did want to announce that we do currently have a statewide overtime enforcement campaign going on for speed right now that will be going through July 22nd, so you may see some messages on changeable message boards, additional enforcement out there doing high visibility enforcement for speed. So that's going on right now, and our next campaign will be, of course, around Labor Day for impaired driving. So we're going to have Renee and Cherise their presentation. Please welcome them.
All right, so I'm Renee Keel with SRF Consulting Group.
Shereen and I are going to give a presentation today on a toolkit we developed that was funded by the Local Road Research Board. We were actually both hired as a team to work on this tool, and we worked with a panel of experts, some of which are in the room today, on driver behavior to help us put this toolkit together. So Shereen and I are going to be jumping back and forth a little on the slides. I'll get us started, and then she'll join me in just a few minutes here to talk about a couple slides in just a minute. So you have to excuse me, I'll have to get used to having the mic if I'm messing with it during the presentation. All right, so they're funded by the Minnesota Local Road Research Board. It was identified that there was a need for local agencies to have information about younger drivers available when they're asked for the community to give presentations, specifically engineers. So there are a few engineers that identified that there crashed in their community, someone was either severely injured or died, and they were asked to give a presentation to the community about younger drivers. And specifically they were asked, the community will come to them and say, someone died here, this intersection is unsafe, you need to fix it. You need to fix this road. There's some sort of design deficiency here. And the engineer really knows, well, actually it's not, in this particular case, it's really not the road. This road isn't a problem. The problem was that the kid was distracted, they were drinking, whatever the case may be. The crash happened because of behavioral issues, not because of an engineering issue. So the engineer is put in a position where they are asked to speak about behavior issues, but they're not experts in it and they don't have the information they need. And so that's where this toolkit came out, to try to give them rego information if they're asked to give presentations about younger drivers. While this was focused for local agencies, since the Local Road Research Board does fund products for the cities and counties of the state, it means is only for engineers. This can be anybody who is interested in using it. When we're talking about the toolkit today, and we're talking about younger drivers, I want to make sure that you understand the younger driver age range that we're focusing is ages 15 to 29. That it may be an interesting age range to consider for younger drivers. Usually when people talk about younger drivers, they focus on teens. When we were working with the panel to put together this document, we really went around and around on what's appropriate to include as young drivers. We want to go up to age 21 because of the legal drinking age, but then when we were looking at the data when we got into the 20s, there still was an overrepresentation of crashes of young drivers in their 20s, and still we're kind of struggling, well, what's that cutoff when you're in the 20s? And so we decided in the end to stick with 29 because that's one of the cutoff age ranges that DPS uses in their crash fact books. And we really wanted to give anyone that was using this the opportunity to get more data from the crash facts data if they needed it. So that's why we use that range for this. However, you will see that there are places where we broke it down between age range. We didn't always focus on that wide range. We did break down some of the data between 15 to 21, and then 15 to 20, and 21 to 29. So more into that later. So real quickly, I want to talk about some statistics I looked up in the new crash fact book that came out just recently for 2015. So the reason why we're focusing on this age group is that last year we know that there was 411 fatalities. 100 of those were this age range, which is about 24%. If we add the injuries, there's 34% of the injuries that happened were from this age range. However, when we look at the number of licensed drivers in this age range, it's only 22%. So definitely an overrepresentation of fatalities and injuries for this age group, which is why we're focusing on them. So let me grab my clicker here. I just want to back real quick, if just for the Road Research Board is, Minnesota has a board where the cities and counties of the state don't allocate funding to the research board, and they do research that specifically benefits the cities and counties. And they focus on applied research, so things that they can take and use instantly. So that's a group that funded this actual toolkit. The research board itself conducts the research, and then we actually work for a committee called the Research Implementation Committee, and they make the research happen. So they develop the products like we're talking about today. Earlier that for the technical advisory panel, this is actually the group of people that helped us develop this toolkit. just one quick, is there a way to get gray box off there so I can see the slide titles? Or do you... Not the... Working on trying to remove it. The gray, okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, so this is the technical advisory panel we work with. I believe there are quite a few people in the room that help with the toolkit, but like I said, we really wanted to make sure we had the experts helping us put this together. No, like in advance. Okay. Sorry, that's okay. There we go. So we're on information for the cities and counties for presentations, where the toolkit itself includes information about trying to help them understand what the problem is with younger drivers, helping them understand the facts, also giving them resources so they can help change behavior. The toolkit is intended to be used as material, ready-to-go materials. So if someone was planning to use this toolkit, they would essentially be given a presentation like I'm doing today. They would work with their local TZD coordinator to try to bring in some safety partners for their presentation. Can use the facts from the toolkit to educate people, and there's actually fact sheets within the toolkit that look like this that they would be able to use as handouts so they're ready to go for the presentations. And then we actually developed a PowerPoint presentation as well that has all data that's included in the toolkit that they can download, and it's ready to go. They can just modify it for their use, take some slides out that maybe aren't applicable to what they're trying to present, or they can modify it to their own community. Part of the toolkit, again, is just trying to understand what the issues are and the facts. The second part is trying to help with behavior change, looking at some strategies for younger drivers. We put a library of public service announcement videos. We talk about what the TZD program is and how they can reach out to some of you to get some support on this. And then we present the PowerPoint itself. Shri, she's going to talk through some of the risk factors that are associated with drivers.
All right, thank you. It's here. I remember spending so much time at the Minnesota Safety Council working with the OTS staff and many of you in this room and our stakeholders, primarily with the Seatbelt Coalition. And I was excited just to come back and be here. I live out in Excelsior and working in Mendota Heights, and I'm not often in this part of the city. So it's really nice to be here and to see all of you. So one that the Local Road Research Board desired was that the community groups that they speak to, that they could help educate them on what's going on with this age group of young drivers through the age of 29, what motivations, what are their perceptions, what are their attitudes about all the high-risk behavior that they're doing behind the wheel. And the reason for that is if we can understand what's happening with their perceptions, their attitudes, their motivations, then we can be more focused on the strategies to address and change that behavior, really getting to the heart of why they're behaving in this way. So that was the intention. So the Local Road, this technical advisory panel asked us, let's look at, and so we scanned the literature, we scanned the research, and you all kind of know this first slide, looking at the young driver risk factors. And so I did break this up. First, teen drivers. You're all very familiar with the fact that with their immaturity, they have this heightened impulse for this sensation-seeking behavior. So that maturity level causes them to want to take that risk and not really being aware of the consequences of that risk. The lack of driving skills and experience is clearly a big contributor, particularly within the 6 months of licensure, where we're seeing greater risk, much greater risk of crash. There are environmental factors that contribute to the high risk. Nighttime driving And definitely the presence of passengers is a huge contributor to why this is a big factor for those teen drivers. We wanted them to understand why teen drivers are 3 times more likely to get into a fatal crash than those drivers that are 20 and older. So moving on to what's shared between teen drivers and those drivers that are 20 years and through 29. And there's a greater willingness to engage in that risk-taking behavior. So distracted, speed, unbelted. There's this overestimatation, I'm not saying that right, for their ability to multitask while driving. So they really have this overconfidence that they can do this, and that's unique to that age group. But that's characteristics that full group share. What separates that age group between 20 and 29 years is the additional factor that they're more likely to drink and drive. So what we understand is that the beginning basis of this group, and I wanted to get it. Takes just a moment. I pressed too. Okay. Minnesota has a record-breaking 94% front seatbelt use rate, and that has been the highest in the history of Minnesota. But still, we're seeing that 40% of our motorists are being killed and they're unbuckled. So what's happening here is that we're seeing that this young age group is particularly likely to be unbuckled, particularly our teens. So young drivers, 15-29, the data that we've seen and used in this report from Crashbacks accounts for 43% of the unbelted fatalities are buckled. So it is significant. Nearly half of those severe injuries are also unbuckled. So we know that teen passengers are at highest risk for unbelted crash and severe injury. So what we wanted to do in this toolkit is not give them all of the data, all the research out there, but to give them highlights. Now, what you have on this slide is just a sampling of some of the motivations of what's behind this high-risk behavior of being unbelted. So clearly that need for peer acceptance and that social pressure to not buckle up is heavily influencing those passengers in the vehicle. They do have an illusion of control, that they can avoid a crash, number one, and number two, they tend to minimize that we'll actually get injured if I'm in an unbelted crash. So they don't quite understand, and they're not comprehending the risk of driving and being a passenger and being unbelted. There's also a bit of mistrust about the benefits of wearing your seatbelt. Is this okay? Just want to be sure. Do I have this? Okay. I didn't change this, so all right, good. So what we have learned is that young drivers are more inclined to wear a seatbelt if those communities are promoting parental engagement, parental involvement. That's clearly a huge factor. All the research supports that. Promoting employer policies and sanctions for unbelted crashes, particularly for that age group 20 to 29. And that, the Minnesota Safety Council and NETS, as Lisa Kahns had mentioned, that's also a resource that we highlight quite a bit within the toolkit of what's available to really promote that community to have parental engagement as well as employer sanctions. Peer-to-peer persuasion and competition. Help change those social norms and change the expectation that I should be buckled and I should be safe. So we know that there are quite a bit of research that tells us that peer competitions and having peers actually give that message themselves and speaking to their friends that this is a huge factor in helping to adjust those expectations. Yes, my friends are in fact buckled up. The law enforcement and that increased perception of being ticketed and stopped, we know in each of these 4 emphasis areas that we're talking about today, that's a common theme, is the importance of that enforcement and really creating that perception that if I do ride or drive unbelted, I will be pulled over. And I know that anything new to many of you. All right. Oh, I hope I don't. I'm pressing. Sir? Oh, it switched. All right. Yep. Perfect. So persons, particularly in their 20s, clearly account for a disproportionate share of impaired driving crashes. They represent about 40% of the DWI arrests in Minnesota. Teen drivers are less likely to drink and drive. However, when they do crash and do drink, they're more likely to get in some trouble. And the reason why is their greater likelihood when consume alcohol, they do it over a shorter period of time, resulting in a higher BAC. If they do drink and drive, it's a greater risk. There results in greater impairment, which really contributes or exacerbates the problem that they have less experience, they have less skill in driving. So young drivers tend to really exaggerate the views of their peers' drinking and driving behavior. So we learned from the research that many of those young drivers that are drinking and driving have this misperception that their friends, their peers are out there doing the same. And there's a misnomer. That's not accurate, but that's what they tend to believe. So what we want to do is we want to counter those misperceptions. And so we look at young drivers are less likely to drink and drive if we correct those misconceptions about their peers. There's quite a bit of research on that, and they are, if we can get them to stop overestimating their peers' drinking and driving behavior, it will curb and really challenge that motivation for them to do the same. Peer-to-peer outreach and persuasion, that's something that you'll see in many of these slides, but we can't say it enough, that outreach and that message given from this target audience themselves to them is particularly important because of that whole need to be connected and be similar to their peers. And then finally, increasing the perception of being stopped and apprehended by law enforcement. So that high visibility enforcement, again, another theme that you'll see. These are things that we want to make sure that engineering community is communicating effectively to the local county boards, city councils that they have been asked to give a presentation to, or a school. So we want to make sure that these themes are coming through for these emphasis areas. Illegal speed in Minnesota accounts for about 1 out of 5 fatal crashes. It's been a bit of a tough nut to crack to really change that driver behavior. So again, what's driving folks really wanting to drive at an unsafe or illegal speed? And what we have found, there's been quite a bit of NHTSA research done that drivers who routinely speed in the posted speed limit, they view it more as a minimum speed. So I did here some factors that contribute to why they are perpetually increasing their speed. Situational factors such as being late. And I look at Nicole Morris because she had a phrase, and it was take 5. Was that it? I remember that a few years ago that she had mentioned. If we could get folks to just leave 5 minutes early, it would be a big contributor in probably slowing everybody down, and I tend to agree with that. So if we could get that mantra going, I think that would be great. We have social pressure, so we know that peer influence in the car makes a difference, particularly males, that influence with male drivers. If it's a girlfriend in the car, they tend to slow down a little bit more. So that's something that is increasing their speed. Inattention, just not being aware of what your speed is, and then those positive feelings of driving fast. The reasons why we tend to increase, or that group does, their speed. And so what we want to do is look at what are those ways that we can decrease. And enforcement is key. But most importantly, that they perceive that if I do speed, I will be stopped, I will get a ticket. So that consistent, sustained enforcement that has that visibility behind it, so everybody sees it, is critical. Social pressure, having those peers in the vehicle speak up, say, hey, can you slow down, I'm uncomfortable. And then, of course, NETS, the Net for Employers for Traffic Safety, that while on the job, having those policies that talks about if you speed while on the job, there's going to be some consequences. So these, and then lastly, the critical traumatic driving events experienced in the past. What we've seen is that if they've had a particular experience that they remember that was traumatic, it's in similar environments that tends to slow them down in the future in those same environments. It doesn't necessarily generalize to all roads, but that's just one of the motivators that would get them to slow down. I wanted to mention here that what I don't have listed here, because I think it's really an emerging technology, is just how can smartphones, we know that there are many apps that are emerging to block cell calls, block text messaging and notifications, but I just wanted to mention we've got the Human First staff here, Max Donath, also Nicole Morris, and Nicole has done quite a bit of research on how smartphones themselves, we can leverage that phone to help give real-time feedback to the teen driver, the younger driver, and also to their parents, and it can be used as a coaching tool, and not just to block calls and text messaging, but more a comprehensive approach. And anyway, we can come back to this when we open this up, Nicole, but I'd love for you to just maybe say a few words about how can a smartphone be used to reduce speed at a particular target audience. Distracted driving. But so distracted driving, we know that in the 2015 crash facts, we see that there has been an uptick in our distracted driving fatalities. In fact, a 21% from 2014 to 15. It may not be that, I believe that there is more distraction because of the prevalence of the smartphones, their capability, even in-car systems, are making it all so accessible for people to access so much information. Unlimited data, all this is contributing. And just this young driver audience tends to be so socially connected. So we know that this is a problem. We also know with the data that law enforcement were reporting this much more now than we did in the past. We believe it was so underreported. So we explain this in the toolkit. I had to mention that OTS did their distracted driving survey back in 2015, and I thought it was interesting that the age group between 16 and 29 will have the highest distraction rate while driving at 35%. So it is important to take a look at this. And it's not just cell phones that's distracting. It's, you know what that is. So the NHTSA conducted a phone survey of 6,000 drivers. And 30% of the drivers aged 18 to 24 years old believe it. I found this kind of astounding, that if they take their eyes off the road for 3 to 10 seconds at a time, that or more before they're, so they actually do that task safely for 3 to 10 seconds, which just astounds me that that's their belief, 30%. Increase confidence to perform secondary tasks. And I will mention that they tend to perform secondary tasks longer than drivers that are older than 29 years. So do them more often, and they tend to take more time because they have this confidence. Drivers are less inclined to engage in distracted driving. So what can we do to promote this? And I think we all know if we could just take that phone and get it away from their person, so get it in the back seat, get it in the trunk. I've mentioned the smartphone technology. At least a number of cell companies, insurance companies, they are providing some incentives. There are apps that are helping us to just really put it almost on airplane mode, so you're not getting the notifications, you're not getting the calls. So that's clearly a piece of all of this. Parental modeling, monitoring, and feedback is key. And then again, speaking out and changing those social norms and expectations. So what we've done here is just, we've only highlighted a few of the motivations, the attitudes and perceptions of this age group for today. There's much more that's provided in the toolkit to give that local engineer, that engineering staff, the understanding to be able to talk to these audiences that they want to talk to. So armed with that understanding, the next step of the toolkit is to provide some specific facts, and Renee will cover that.
To help hand these out real quick. Those of you online, I apologize, we don't have the notes for you, but it is a page within the toolkit itself, and it seems our slides, oh, there we go. Oh, they're catching up. I'm going to talk quickly about the facts that are included in the toolkit. We created a series of fact sheets, so the one I'm handing out right now is just one of the 5 we're trying to do. They're all formatted the same way. They have all the same categories. If you looked at all 5 of them, they'd look exactly the same, but they're different colors. This is really giving you the data about younger drivers and compared to all drivers. And one that I handed out right now is just an overview of younger drivers in general. The other 4 that are included in the toolkit focus on younger drivers and how they're how they relate to speeding, and how they relate to alcohol, how they relate to distracted driving, and unbelted. So the toolkit itself is actually, I have a hard copy of it here, and so look through the fact sheet section. Each fact sheet is actually a different color. So I'm going to pass this around as well while I'm speaking, just so if you guys want to see a hard copy of the entire toolkit itself.
You said that already.
Mm-hmm.
Did we distribute?
I don't know if I mentioned that.
Oh, okay. It's an online tool, so all of the information, the links, they're all active. So when we reference some, source, for example, there's an active link that they can click to and go directly to that. So there isn't really hard copies, but it's an online tool.
Right.
Oh, located.
It's on the Local Road Research Board's website, the lrb.org. And I do also have flyers for everyone here today when you leave that gives you all the information you need how to get to it and such. So you can grab that on your way out. All right, so on the screen here is a copy of what you have in your hand. There's kind of what other 4 look like, the color scheme. So if you had the hard copy of the toolkit itself, you would see that they're all different colors. The bottom side mentions what the category is. And so if you happen to have a crash and you're focusing on, distracted driving, you can, print print out just that fact sheet for your audience. Get into the details of the data or discuss, what focus is, but I just wanted to go through and just talk you through quickly of what's included in this sheet. So I have an overall summary that compares distracted drivers and young drivers to all drivers, so you can see kind of the impact younger drivers have. We did graph the number of fatalities, the number of crashes. Is that correct? Yes. For over years, and so the blue line represents ages 15 to 20, and the red line represents ages 21 to 29. Whenever those age groups have a very significant difference in the data, we did separate them. If they did not, we left them grouped together just for simplicity purposes within the toolkit. We look at age and gender, so we have a bar graph that shows male and females, number of crashes that they were involved in based on their age, so you can have a visual to see how males and females compare. Crashes, so it was a rear end, a run off the road, that sort of thing, showing you what percentage of type crashes are involved in. We and month and distribute, and again we looked at the different age ranges. You can see on the side here. Yeah.
With age range, we were kind of interested in seeing if, for the younger drivers, if there were some differences with the teen drivers and with those drivers between 20 and 29. And what we are seeing, for example, in unbelted, it is higher for the teen drivers. So that's why we didn't lump them all together. Alcohol would be another kind of distinguishing characteristic of those two separate groups. So you can clearly put numbers together for the full group, or we can separate them out. If they're going to a high school, they'd be more interested in that, the younger, teen to 19.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We looked at the type of road what the crashes are occurring on, and we all know that a lot of the crashes are always happening on these two-lane roadways, but trying to give a visual impact for people to understand that that's where a lot of the crashes are occurring. And then we looked at what type of intersection control is occurring. If it's an intersection-related crash, a lot of it is always the through stop control, so a stop sign that's on a two-lane highway, a side street approach. Additional contributing factors. And so if we all this data and try to break down what kind of contributing factors were happening in the crashes, you can see on the top that it's usually a lane departure type crash or intersection related. And then we also looked at if they were unbelted, speeding, distracted, all those other things. So you can get a feel for what type of contributing factors are applying to these types of crashes. Oh, I believe this is, Shree's going to jump in real quick here again.
Oh, all right. Mention that this, you can't see it because of the slide title, but this is resources for behavioral change. So the toolkit is broken into two sections. The first section is really understanding the problem, understanding the motivation, understanding the crash facts. So really giving them that foundational understanding, because we need to understand in order for us to identify the most effective strategies to address. And so, so this is the second part of the toolkit, which is strategies for behavioral change. So we start out with giving them some strategies, give them some public service announcements, and Renee will be talking about that later in just a moment. Talking about Towards Zero Death partnerships and the Younger Driver PowerPoint presentation, what I'll come back to. What are the strategies, the local strategies? And what I wanted to mention here is these are strategies that is consistent with the Office of Traffic Safety Highway Safety Plan their annual plan for what they're going to be doing on a statewide level. We wanted to make sure that the strategies that we were encouraging with the city and counties and what they're going to be talking to with the county boards and city councils and so forth was consistent with what we were doing on a statewide level. So that's important to us. Also, looking at what can realistically be done at the local level. And sometimes it can be challenging because resources you have to be more creative of how to leverage those local resources in order for some of these initiatives to go forward. So what you have in front of you is a sampling of strategies. It wasn't intended, if you look at the countermeasures that work, that is a very extensive book on all of the countermeasures in each of these 4 areas. However, what can realistically be done at the local level? So this really, in what the book told us, of the TAP, we had pages and pages and pages and pages. This is really about a presentation, getting this discussion going, giving them some examples so they themselves can kind of jump in and going, well, we could that, well, what about this? And really to launch them into thinking of additional strategies. So each of these have links, and clearly this can be expanded. It can grow. And what we want to do is direct them to the local TZD resource, that regional TZD coordinator. That's where we want that discussion to begin, and that TZD leadership team. So we're in to kind of get the creative juices flowing, let them know maybe there's a couple of things here that we can get started. There are things that have been happening. Contact their regional TZD coordinator of what's happening and how can we help. And we give them that information. So I'll turn it back to Renee to talk about the PSAs.
So the tables are actually right in the toolkit. That's just a printout of a couple of tables. The next piece, as far as resources, is we decided that there are tons of public service announcement videos out there, and there's some very great, impactful ones. And we wanted to put together a library of PSAs that you could use to educate the various behavior issues. We ended up putting together a list of the top 10 videos that we thought would address speeding, alcohol, distracted driving, coming up as I'm showing you distracted driving, and use. And we looked, how do you pick the top 10 best videos? Because there are so many. There's so many. And so we actually had an intern at our office spend hours and hours watching videos, putting together lists of videos, and we came up with close to 50 videos for every topic. And we had the technical advisory panel, and we were like, okay, we have all these videos. Let's start watching them and pick the best ones. And what we realized is that the technical advisory panel is not the age group that we're focusing on. Well, in our, we're not in the age group, 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever. We're not the right people making this decision. And so I actually rounded up about 5 or 6 people that are in the age group, and them sit down and watch all the videos. They spent hours watching all the videos, and they had a tally, and they ranked them based on which ones that impacted them the most. And then based on their, we took an average of their votes and came up with the top 10 videos based on the input from that age group. So you can go to the toolkit, and there's a table like this for each of those 4 categories that shows you a little thumbnail image of the video itself, because sometimes people can recognize it because they've seen it and they can see the thumbnail. It gives you the title, a really short sentence about what the video is about, and then a link to where they can go to play the video in a presentation if they wanted to. I did, when I asked this panel of people to help with this, they're really excited about it. And when they were done, I just terrible because these videos are very hard to watch. I mean, when you watch 230 videos about people dying and getting in trouble for driving, like, they walked out of there very sad. And so I thank them very much for going through this process, because it was just, I knew about it when I asked them to do this. It was very impactful for them. So Shree's going to talk us through the TZD program quick, and then do you want me to do it?
Yep, it doesn't matter.
All right, so we know what the TZD program is. You're all involved, but we just wanted to show you that the kit went into detail to try to explain to people what this is, because sometimes some of the engineers or people that are using the toolkit aren't as familiar with TZD. So we highlighted the website, we highlighted the program one-pager, the strategic plan, some of the maps of partners, some of the local initiatives that are being done in each of the regions, all the TZD contacts, and then the events such as the conference, these breakfasts, other meetings that occur. And really, since this is like an online document, linked to all these documents. So if anyone wants to read any of these, they can, if they're with the toolkit, they can get to them very easily. Oops, I skipped one. We tell about the 8 regions because a lot of times one of these communities is going to be in a rural area, and they might relate to someone that's in the metro area. So we try to highlight each of the regions. We have the one-page summaries from each of the regions within the toolkit itself, and contact information for the coordinators and the local stakeholders. This is just a screenshot of what the presentation it looks itself. So the PowerPoint can download. It looks like the presentation I'm giving today, but it has a lot more detail. There's about 100 slides in it, mostly because we want to give them more information than they need, and they can just delete the slides that they don't want to use. So this is what the toolkit looks like. I passed around a copy of it. You can go to lrb.org to find it. Published last end of summer. And distributed to all the cities and counties via state aid. It was to all the TZD program members and the regional coordinators. This I have up here that you can take with you today. I've been giving a lot of presentations on this, so we have been trying to get the word out about the toolkit. We gave a presentation at the CTS conference last year, at the TZD conference last year, city engineers meeting. I actually gave a presentation at TRB in January on the toolkit, and then today's breakfast. What slide is. So when we were when I was asked to present today, Kate was asking me to see if we could find someone in the local community to actually use this toolkit and have them come up and give some information about their experiences. And we reached out to all the cities and counties and asked them if they'd used it. They all are familiar with it and they have it, but we haven't been able to find someone that's actually gotten up and used it as a toolkit. And so we really think it's a great resource and has a lot of good information. And we've been trying to figure out how to promote it and get it out. However, you know, I guess looking for ideas from you, because you realize the community that is in touch with this kind of information, and we've been doing our best based on the information and the charge that we were given based on being hired to do this product. But I'm sure you guys have ideas of maybe different ways that this toolkit could be used, and I'd be definitely interested to open it up for comments or thoughts on how we could distribute this more. Yeah.
Okay. So we just want to make sure that the microphone's available. So
yeah, it looks like there's a question over there. And then just as a reminder for folks online to please type your questions into the chat box and we answer those. But we got a question in the room.
So Nicole Morris, Human First. One of the things that strikes me is the intent when you were really thinking about building this was to be sort of a reactive kit. So, you know, the thought that tragedy has struck and now people are coming to you for answers. And so maybe thinking of this as more proactive. So, you know, seeking out people to give these presentations ahead of a crash. You know, so if we're really thinking in terms of TZD, we really want to be preventing crashes rather than reacting to crashes that have occurred. So been thinking church groups, you know, whoever might be interested, and just bring this information at a meeting, you know, to try to find people who might want to use this rather than people who are in need of it, you know, and feeling like they need it in a tragic event.
Right, great comment.
I got one right here.
I have been, this is Lisa Kahn, Minnesota Safety Council and the NETS group. I've been promoting this resources. When I go out and I'm working with employers on any subject matter, at the end of the presentation, I always share this resource with employers and employee work groups. And typically, I'm just talking to employees. I'll know about this resource, go back to Nicole's point, employees wear many hats. And so that employee
leaves that office, they may be part of that church group, they may be a PTA board member, they may be a soccer player board member, and they may be connected with the school and take it back to their school. You just never know how they may utilize it. One thing I've not done is done an e-blast to my employer group. So I can talk to you about it, using this and sending it out as a resource. And Gordy and I just talked offline here, and it says in here, provided, that the thing that is kind of scary for people when they read it, county transportation and traffic safety engineering, they see those words and they think, oh, it doesn't apply to me. So I think if we soften that language up a little and make it more acceptable to this is a proactive education to help teens more alert, drive safer, then maybe it reaches them a little bit more versus, oh, I don't, engineering doesn't involve me, that relate to me type thing. So a little of a softer sell.
Oh, sorry, he doesn't have the microphone. You need the mic after Peter. Okay.
A question and a comment. The comment, as far as use of this, I wouldn't use this in a reactive situation. If someone just had their teen die, I wouldn't show up with a bunch of data to a public meeting. It's more of a proactive type of informational. Maybe a month after the tragedy, you could go out in a public outreach, but response within a week or so, I wouldn't show up with this. And I've had to be in that situation, and it's just not the venue for providing data on that sounds an excuse rather than an empathetic approach. Second, my question is, Cherie mentioned that nighttime drivers were a high-risk category, and then you have a chart here. Yet and the chart kind of supports that most of the crashes happen during daylight hours. So is it disproportionate to this age group, the nighttime crashes, compared to the general driving population, or not?
No, agreed that what we're seeing in this age group, particularly for teens, around the school hours when they're driving to school, particularly when they're driving from school, they're getting into more crashes, so that is true. I'm wondering if my thinking was the unbelted. Actually, those who've been drinking often are unbelted. That's more of an issue at night. The risk for teen drivers, there's a greater risk at night. So that's hence the graduated driver's licensing and restricting those nighttime hours. So I can't go back to exactly, but we know that time is a contributing factor to those novice drivers. We do that, and that is proven. Any comments to that, Nicole? Oh. Got it. Let Nicole, and then BJ, we'll get to you next. Sorry.
Oh,
okay.
So to quickly address so when you're looking at total number of crashes, it goes with sort of logic that you're going to have more crashes around those school time hours because exposure is highest. So you have high miles traveled for teens during those hours. You have very few hours that they tend to travel at night, but then they're disproportionately at risk for crashes. So if we were to, get the rate of mile to crashes, you have higher crashes at night. You just don't have a very high number of them in total because you have very few teens out during those hours.
They are out. There's that higher risk. Is that your question, Peter? Okay.
Yeah, the question I have is that how we could deploy this particular tool for focus-led distraction-free driving clubs that our foundation have piloted in the last year and continue to grow that. They're already in operation in Eden Prairie and Edina, and then 3,000 students who are participating very actively. And we plan to increase the number of those in the Twin Cities area and maybe in Rochester area too. So I would like to have access to this toolkit that could be distributed to these leaders for those teenager clubs because they're always seeking new projects. We could use that as a tool for creating new projects for them.
Very good. Vijay, have you connected with the Metro TZD Regional Coordinator?
Well,
sorry,
majority of them.
Don't remember your first name. Susan, very good. So that would be a great connection, VJ, to connect with Susan.
Okay. We've got a question online. I can state from Natalie Gill, if I'm saying it right. Is there any information in the toolkit related to bicycling, related to motor vehicles / bicycle crashes?
We actually did not focus on bicycle crashes. We were looking at, I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, we were just Ks and As. We weren't looking at all crashes. And the charge of this task in the panel was to just focus on crashes and not look at the ped and bike impacts. So it was just that we weren't going to get that too detailed in the data for this task.
I just proactively, we are asked to go right into driver's education classes at the high schools, and this is going to be an awesome program and make my life so much easier.
Good. That's really nice to hear. Just a favor, when you do use the toolkit, would you be willing to submit some feedback as to what's working, what could be strengthened? Because we know we do give quite a bit of data, and we know the data is always changing. I had to mention that this was a specific project with a specific budget, with a specific ending time. So right now, there isn't that ongoing funding for those updates, but there's always, is it every 2 years that the LRB looks at?
Well, so the LRB, every year they give money to new proposals. That girl was talking about the Research Implementation Committee. That's a smaller subset that makes tools like this happen. They have a sting contract every 3 years of projects that they identify, but they do always have an extra amount of money for things that pop up that the community feels is important. So if they get feedback from people they want this updated, they definitely would have some money available to have Sheree and I or something spend, I don't know, just to update the data within the toolkit. I don't think it would be a ton of work. It does take a little bit of time. That data set was very extensive. I was very by how much work it was to get through all that data and make sure it was correct, and we could back it up. And so there definitely is opportunities to update it if the LRB gets impact or feedback that people want it.
Pearson from the Office of Traffic Safety. One recommendation in regard to the data that I feel might be useful from the standpoint of keeping the shelf life of the program viable and not requiring updates is to be a little less specific about the exact numbers. I think that the intended audience that you're reaching here, you can kind of overwhelm them with data, and whether the percentage is 21.5% or 22%, I don't think that the audience in general really cares about those minor differences. So just as a recommendation for a potential update to be a little less specific about the exact data numbers and just a little bit more. It still gets the message across, identifying what the problems are. But that's in essence what we did. We designed the Point of Impact Parent Awareness Program. Again, it extends the shelf life a little bit longer. I think it does as an effective of a job as giving specific data points.
Tell that to the engineers. That's challenging, but I hear what you're saying, and maybe there's a way, Gordy, where we just update the fact sheets, and then what's said in the toolkit, what we reference in the toolkit, is more generalized. That might be a way of kind of an in-between, so the engineers can get that hard data that they're really looking for and need. So.
Again, Human First. So one thought I had just thinking of who might be presenting this work to the different audiences, which is hard to predict because it seems like it could be across the board. But if we're thinking about the intended presenters, which would be primarily engineers, working in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, I can tell you there's nothing more titillating than hearing an engineer say a bunch of statistics to you. So good at it.
To Gordy's point a little bit, yeah.
So think about, are there ways to build in some more interactive things? I mean, especially if you're thinking about young drivers and the population really engaging them? So are there some sort of activities or, you know, I think it's always good to start out with having them, you know, say what do you think the percent of distracted driving crashes are to all total crashes? How many people tend to die, you know? So just giving them some ideas of how to get people engaged in the process, because, you know, after 5-10 minutes of those numbers, no one's listening anymore. I hate to say it, but that's the truth.
And that's a really good point, Nicole. You know, the first run at this type of resource, and we're seeing there are lots of ways to enhance. And so I've written that down. We are encouraging those engineers that have been asked to give the presentation to bring in the 4E perspectives into that. You know, don't do it alone, but bring in others from the 4E, the TZD community, to help kind of round out and make that a bit more interesting and interactive. So that's a suggestion that we've offered, but that's a good point.
So, Christine, I was on the TAP, so I was thrilled for one that Renee did pull in that focus group of teens, because I got the email of the list. I'd seen many of the videos, but I was like, out. But she found the right audience, and then what you just did was create a bunch of educators, right?
Oh, interesting.
So that was a behavior change that they went through without having to go through the whole system. But that's kind of what I was thinking about too, when, you know, engineer in there, but when trying to affect a culture change and a behavior shift like that with that group is running with whoever presenting to. This could be your son, your daughter, and bringing in those peer educators would be the direction we could go. So I'm not really talking about the strategy to get the toolkit out, but how to use this toolkit.
Right.
And so even the SAD groups would be another educator type of group. We could send it to through the schools, and obviously driver educators would be audience in the front row here, but I really think that the teens could be raising this to the next bar if we use them as the peer educators with this.
Can I make a comment to what Christine said? I'm watching the time, but we know that there isn't any silver bullet with traffic safety, and we know that a video on its own isn't have much of a behavioral impact. So this group understands that it's a comprehensive approach. So if we have strong policies, we enforce about those policies. We have that education and outreach, including videos, PSAs, but it's that community-wide approach with all strategies working together, integrated. That's why the regional TZD coordinator, statewide, TZD, that's what makes it work. It's all these components working together for a community-wide approach that changes the culture within that community. But it's none of the, maybe with the exception of enforcement, that is so proven to have that stick behavioral change, motivation for people to change their risk-taking. But just to say, it needs to be that comprehensive, all these elements working together. That's what's going to make a difference. So, all right, great. No, that's fine.
I just want to remind everyone to please fill out your evaluation forms. They're the yellow evaluation forms. Katie, do we have any type of online evaluation for this? Okay, for those of you online, because there's a significant we would like to hear back from you. We will make some available. I also wanted to remind everyone that the next stakeholder breakfast is scheduled for January. We're down to doing 2 of these a year because we have the spring workshops and the fall conference. I wanted to just kind of touch on Cherie's about the key and the comprehensive. I think you probably noticed that Department of Public Safety, our theme in our media campaign is Speak Up, and we're always challenging each other. We put in our messaging, it's in our our paid media, what we talk about online and Facebook. Of course, I challenge all of you to do that in your day today. With I think a lot of people are not afraid to speak up in this room. I know you all very well for the most part. So if it's just that little comment, I've been a bit of it with my family recently, my brothers and my sisters and sister-in-laws, and the things they're trying to communicate back and forth. And I said, it's not, you can wait 10 minutes. Wait till you're off the road. You can make that phone call. You can do that text. And I've had a couple of sneers, but I think I actually got through one of my brothers now. So I'm pretty proud of that. That was a pretty tough nut crack. So please join me in thanking the presenters. Wonderful job. And we have just a couple of minutes if anyone has anything for TZD updates for the good of the group. Anything?
The TDS or not yet?
Okay, we have 1 minute for Nicole.
Okay, so really briefly, what we did at the U, looking at teen driving and how can we leverage a smartphone to be a really useful tool to provide real-time feedback. If a parent is sitting in that passenger seat really coaching the teen, it has a really good protective effect over the teen. So how can we create basically a surrogate parent for the teen when the parent is unavailable to be present in the car? So we used a smartphone app that we built in-house. It tracks where the teen is, what road are they on, what is the posted speed limit, and it gives them that speed limit information very clearly on the screen of the smartphone. And when they start to exceed the speed limit, it turns yellow. So that soft warning, hey, you're starting to go a little too fast. When they go faster, around 7 miles over the speed limit, it turns red. And at that point, the phone would say, exceeding speed limit, reduce speed now. If you ask them, it says it's screaming at them, but I promise you it's the Google voice, just very calm. And gives them a moment to correct their behavior. If they don't slow down, it says it again. Another moment to correct their behavior. On that third warning, it will say, reduce speed now or parents will be notified. And then between 0 and 5 seconds at random, they don't know exactly when, then we'll say text message sent. And then their sort of turkey is cooked. And that text message goes out to parents, and parents will receive in real time a text message saying, your teen is on Highway 5, the speed limit is 5 miles an hour, and they're going 77 miles an hour. This is the timestamp. And so the intent is that you have really great dialogue between parent and teen around the dinner table. Hey, what was going on, Bobby? I saw that you were speeding on Highway 5. What do we need to do to fix that behavior? Other built-in tools, so we know if they have a hard braking maneuver, hard turning maneuver, hard acceleration. So that gives immediate coaching and feedback to the teen, and immediate text messages go out to the parents. So the parents are really in know, because parents, as we find through the research, are really unaware of how often their teens are engaging in risky driving. That everyone wants to think their kid is a great kid, but unfortunately most kids are inexperienced and have poor decision making when it comes to driving. So this app with 300 teens in Minnesota, we had 100 teens that were just doing baseline data collection. So we were looking at how they behave naturally, 100 teens that had in-vehicle coaching only, and then 100 teens that had in-vehicle coaching with the parents involved. We were able to significantly reduce the amount of speeding those teens were involved in over the whole first year of independent driving. So a great success. Big kudos to MnDOT for funding this project, and hope to continue to spread the word about our results. We do have a commercially available app that we are making some final tweaks to, and so the hope is that we can find some more partners. Certainly not looking to make any money off of this, but it does money to run an app like this. So we were looking for new partners to get this in the hands of as many teens as we can.
Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes our stakeholder breakfast. And for those of you that are staying for the TZD program team meeting, that is down at the classroom.